Welcome to Section 2, WebDriver Basics. In this section, we're going to take a look at a high-level overview of the WebDriver architecture. We'll talk about how you can attach and automate just about any browser, and we'll discuss one of the building blocks of automating a browser, which is retrieving a web page. And then from there, we'll kind of grow out and we'll show you how you can perform actions on a web page using Java code. Welcome to WebDriver architecture. In this video, we're going to take a look at a high-level overview of the Selenium WebDriver architecture, but primarily there's three components that I want to touch on. It's the language bindings, the drivers, and the browsers. And essentially, we're going to put all three of these together to show how WebDriver can automate a browser. So let's begin. So, a possible WebDriver architecture may look something like this. At one level, we have the language bindings for things like Java, Python, Ruby, etc. And then at another layer, we have the drivers, like Chrome driver, Firefox driver, etc. And then the last layer are the browsers. And we all know these, things like Chrome, Firefox, Safari, Opera, etc. But what I want you to take away from this is that language bindings communicate with the drivers, and the drivers then communicate with the browsers. And they communicate by passing data back and forth as JSON using HTTP requests. So let's look at one of those layers, language bindings. Essentially, Selenium supports multiple different languages. These are things like Java, Python, Ruby, C#, JavaScript, and more. And essentially, these allow us to write scripts to control an instance of WebDriver. And another layer are the drivers. These are a separate driver for each browser. And you can kind of think of this as just an HTTP server. Essentially, it communicates natively with the browser, and it abstracts away the complex internal API of that browser. And like I mentioned, we are automating browsers, and Selenium supports multiple browsers like Chrome, Firefox, Safari, and more. Each browser has different native functionality, and each of those browsers has a different internal API, and supporting all of those different APIs can make things really complex for your project. So essentially what WebDriver does is it provides an API to easily use the native functionality of all those browsers. Now, in the previous section, I showed you how you can download the language bindings and the drivers, but if you were forgetful or if you missed that section, you can actually download these at the Selenium HQ homepage at seleniumhq.org/download. And once you're on the download page, you can scroll down and find the section where it says Selenium Client and WebDriver Language Bindings. And here's the list of languages that Selenium supports, and here are their language bindings. And so for this class, we're focusing on Java, and we want the Java language binding, so you can go and download them here. Similarly, for the drivers, if you scroll down to where it says Third-Party Drivers, Bindings, and Plugins, as I mentioned, we will be focusing primarily on Firefox. So for this course, you need the Mozilla Gecko driver. But if you wanted to automate Chrome instead, you would have to get the Google Chrome driver, or if you want Opera, you'd need the Opera driver, etc., etc. So you might be wondering, how does WebDriver automate a browser? Well, it's really just a simple three-step process. Step 1, the Java client sends a message to the driver. In step 2, the driver receives a message from the client and then makes an HTTP request to the desired browser. And then step 3, the browser's native functionality is then automated via commands from the driver. In the next video, I'll show you how we can attach any browser and automate it.